A door slams behind me, and the heat brushes my skin like a heated palm, insistently, as if the West Texas sun has come to testify against me. The hall breathes with a dry sigh, the air scented with something old and faintly sweet, dust and wood polish and a hint of something clinical, like sterilized ink. I steady myself on the railing, listening to the stairs groan under the weight of a house that never learned to be quiet. Not since my childhood, when it pretended to be a loving guardian and proved instead to be a trap in a pastoral coat. The study is a cathedral of yellowed pages and the ghost of a calendar that never turns. The probate files spill from a tower of file boxes onto the desk, ink-stamped mouths gaping at me as if they've been waiting for this exact moment to bite back. The will should have been sealed, safe, something I could memorize and move forward with, but the desk is bare, except for a single envelope that looks too new for a place like this, the corner crisp and the edge still sharp. I lift it. Feel the weight of the air change as if a door upstairs has just opened to let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. There's no seal to break, only a careless snap of a tab, and the letter inside stares up at me in a handwriting that is both familiar and wrong. The signature on the codicil isn't my father's, not even my father's attorney's. It's my mother's, delicately traced, confident, as if she has practiced 1,000 times the same gesture of granting and withholding. The sentences are careful, the punctuation precise, like she's counted each comma for a trap. A line about conveying the remainder to a trust that she alone will administer sits beneath a clause that should name me, a rightful heir, as the beneficiary to a lump sum 50,000, 100,000, something she's decided to turn into whatever she wants me to think she's protecting me from. Are you listening, darling? She calls from the kitchen, a voice that slides through the walls, soft as a kiss and twice as sharp. I've taken the liberty of lighting the atmosphere with a bit of order. The attorneys are working late, like good guardians should. The tone is light, almost tender, as if she's smoothing a stray hair from my forehead, as if we are a family in a painting, rather than people who know the room is a trap and the painting has lightning behind it. I force my jaw straight. What does this mean, Mama? The word feels wrong in my mouth, a toy I no longer know how to play with, but I say it anyway, because the shape of fear is easier to recognize when spoken aloud. She slides into the doorway with that slow, protective step she has perfected since I was a child. Hands soft, eyes always hovering, as if she's shielding something. Her apron rustles with a domestic ritual I remember all too well, the way she prefaces a request with a cup of tea, the way she says a phrase that sounds like care and lands like a hammer. It means you're grown now, dear, and grown-ups need to make important choices under pressure. You've got deadlines, you see. Real deadlines. She lifts a plate from a tray I hadn't noticed and sets it on the desk, a wedge of pecan pie cooling, the sweetness juxtaposed with the sting of something rotten beneath the crust. I don't take the plate. The pie scent isn't dessert. It's a lure. It's the same old tactic, the careful care that is never just care, always a rehearsal for a request I'll be suckered into granting. I won't bite. Not again. Her voice lowers, becomes almost a whisper that slides around the room, curling behind the stacks of files, like a draft you'd rather seal with a draft stopper but can't reach. You've rushed back from wherever you've been. You think the money is only about you. It can be a burden, darling. A way to fix something that never truly got fixed. It can keep us safe. Her hand hovers over the desk, not touching anything, as if she's gauging the distance to the truth and deciding whether she should cross it. You would think the mother who loves you would be a fortress, but in this house, she's a labyrinth, and every door you pick leads you to another room where your footprints have already begun to fade. The will, the trust, these briars of legalese, they're not just documents. They're the way she measures the space between us, the way she marks time with filing deadlines, the way she tests how far I'll go to prove I've learned to be grateful for whatever remains. The attic above us sighs with heat and memory. I climb the stairs, the wood groaning under my shoes, and the air grows thicker, a resin tang of old rain and dust, a hint of something older than the house, something that belongs to the land itself, stubborn and unforgiving. The attic is a hive of trunks and boxes, family photos, letters tied with black ribbon, a calendar from a decade ago with every birthday circled in ink that has bled into the paper. A single crate sits at the far end, sealed with a yellowed strap. The type of crate you'd expect to hold a body or something equally heavy. It's not. Inside the crate, there are notices, pleadings, filings from the county clerk's office that shouldn't exist in a private archive, unusual docket numbers, a handful of stamped dates that don't match the regular cadence of the estate's routine. There's a thin manila envelope with a return address that's just a blend of numbers and a street in a city I've never visited, a place my mother would never admit she fears, the place where the real money hangs out, the kind of money that buys a quiet life and the silence to keep it. I sift through the papers and the heat blooms at the back of my neck. One page is an altered clause from the trust, a line inserted in a handwriting that tries to imitate my father's, the same flourish of a capital D that would appear in his signature if he'd practiced it until his hand learned to obey him. The change is cunning, a mere handful of words, but they rearrange the entire calculation of the inheritance. Instead of a straightforward payout to me, the verbiage folds the funds into a new vehicle, a private trust that would be administered by someone my mother has quietly steered toward, an attorney who owes her a favor, a business associate she calls a protector, someone who would never question the terms because the question would cost them money and time and their own reputation in this dusty town. The other documents, filings, notices, the sort of bureaucratic alphabet soup that can steal your future while you're busy making small talk at a barbecue, tell a similar story, a minor change that doesn't scream fraud at first glance, but when you hold it to the light, it's a knife hiding in a bouquet of flowers. There's a signature stamp that looks crisp and new, almost museum perfect, and then there's a cascade of dates that don't align with the county's calendar, as if someone hot-wired the clock to confuse any careful reader who would notice the discrepancy. The deadlines are there too, marching toward an imminent date that could slip through my fingers if I misread a line or if I'm late to file a contest. Or if I fail to recognize the subtle cue that shows this is not about safeguarding what's owed to me, but about what's owed to her. A corner of the attic floor catches the heel of my boot and the boards protest with a dry, brittle sigh, like a patient old judge whose patience has worn thin and who's decided I'm not the case he wants to hear. The house seems to lean toward the documents, listening as if the letters will reveal an intention I should fear, or a confession meant only for those who know how to listen for it inside these walls. And maybe it does, because every creak in the rafters feels personal, as if the property itself is listening to every breath I take, every careful step I'm forced to take toward a truth I didn't ask for and still must face. When I return to the study, the pie has cooled to a dull, suspicious sheen on the plate, the scent no longer seductive, but coercive, like a culinary trap laid to soften the guard. My mother stands at the window, watching the dust swirl in the light, the linen of her blouse catching and releasing a tremor that isn't there when she's performing her most practiced smiles. She's not just protecting me from the world or from the terrible folly of an impulsive choice. She's protecting her own future, a future where she's at the center, the quiet sun around which all our orbits should revolve. Her gaze holds mine with the same soft scrutiny she uses when she asks me about men I've dated, or the last time I cried in the privacy of the car. The same moment she can tell I'm not telling the whole truth, and she'll coax, until I spill a truth that suits her more than it does me. "I still want you to have your share, darling," she says, and there's a warm certainty in the phrase that makes me want to believe it. To let the warmth fog the edges of what I know I must do. The money is there for you, if you're willing to navigate the best path. We can get you what you deserve without tearing the house apart or hurting anyone who loves you. The last words slide out so smoothly that they almost shimmer in the air, as if she's offering a hand to a frightened animal. But who is the animal here? The house has become a man-sized creature with a mouth full of doors and a memory for every lie ever told within it. I pick up the envelope from the desk again. The page with the altered language pressed between my fingers. The clock on the wall ticks in a patient, merciless rhythm, counting toward a deadline I can neither ignore nor escape. The town outside is a quiet heat, a place where people's lives routinely pause to wait for something to be resolved in the courthouse, something to be adjudicated that will decide who sits in the rooms where the air feels thick with money and the unspoken fear of losing it all. The embrace of the familiar. The church bell, the barber's chair, the gas station's fluorescent glow feels almost sacramental in its predictability. And that predictability makes the threat feel more intimate than any outside danger could be. The mother laughs softly, almost kindly, and the sound lands like a parent's blessing that also comes with a price tag. If you're careful, you can have this, and you can keep the peace. If you're not well, you've watched what happens when peace breaks. The town knows how to watch. Her eyes flick to the window, to the forever distant horizon where the land bleeds into a pale blue heat. And I know she's not talking about the weather. She's talking about me, about the way I'll respond when I realize what she's done, what she's quietly arranging to keep me compliant. Back in the attic, I press the older letters to my chest, as if by holding them close, I can memorize the exact texture of a truth I cannot quite name. There's a rumor that the probate clerk who handles our case has a habit of keeping a personal copy of every trust where the beneficiary's name isn't obvious, a private ledger of the ambitions of those who handle other people's lives for a living. The rumor is nothing more than a rumor until you see a note tucked inside a file that proves someone else has been paying attention to my file, flipping the pages to a chapter that isn't mine to read yet. A chapter where a deadline is a noose and every hour that passes tightens it. The house hums with the kind of quiet that makes you feel unseen, the same quiet that makes a person remember every word spoken in the past without noticing how the present has learned to borrow their tone. I feel the pull of a decision I can't pretend to ignore, that I didn't come back to Texas to stumble through a predictable future, but to fight for something that should be mine. Something that could change the way I see my own reflection when I stand before a mirror in a room lit by the late summer sun. I pace the study, the air thick around me, counting the steps that bring me from the safe, where my father kept brave, honest documents, to the desk where a forged sigh of a signature waits to pretend it's legitimate. If I can locate the original version of the trust, if I can show the judge that the amended lines do not align with the clear intent of the decedent, if I can lay out the evidence of irregular filings and a pattern of deadlines manipulated to favor a hidden beneficiary, I might keep the 100,000 from slipping away into a private ledger where my mother would be the sole director, where my own name would disappear into a fiction she writes to keep herself safe. The clock on the wall ticks louder, a drumbeat that pushes me to move, to decide, to act. I know what she wants me to do, sign away any contest, accept a smaller, safer sum, accept the peace she promises, the fragile peace that has kept us from burning this house to the ground for years. She wants me to trade a rightful claim for a comfortable quiet, to trade my future for a present that won't complicate her life. And for a moment, the thought of losing what is due to me, losing the only thread that keeps this house from swallowing me whole, burns like a fever behind my eyes. But the fever cools when I push the file back into the crate, when I tuck the proof I grabbed into the lining of my coat, when I step into the hall and feel the house's old, protective sheltering fall away to reveal a more hollow, predatory shape. The mother's voice slips through the doorway again, a balm that tastes like fear, reminding me of the people she's protected, the bargains she's made, the favors she's never bothered to repay. I think of the 100 grand, of the debts I've carried from cities and seasons far from here, of the way a life can hinge on a single page that can be rewritten while you're looking away. The wind outside shifts, and with it comes a thinly veiled warning, a whispering threat that the town itself seems to project onto my skin. Trust is a trap, and traps are designed to feel like home. I know she's right in a way I don't want to admit. That trust can become leverage, that protection can be a prison. But trust is also what keeps me from letting go of the day I learned to call this place home. What keeps me from becoming the kind of person who leaves a family to wither under the weight of a will that isn't theirs to bend. So I walk back to the desk, not to surrender but to map the path to a fight I must win. I pull the notepad toward me and start listing the irregularities, the way a doctor would diagnose a wound. The altered clause, the mismatched ink, the hoarded dates, the opaque filings, the looming deadline. I note the possible routes, the petition to reopen the probate, the motion to compel the production of the original documents, the request for lender testimony about the finances behind the trust, the demand for a forensic review of the signature. It's a plan that feels as fragile as a glass blooming in a heat wave, but it's a plan, and plans have a way of becoming roads if you keep walking. I don't look up when her footsteps approach, but I feel the space shift as she stops beside me, the air between us suddenly electric with the knowledge that something in this house has just changed. My heart drums a quick, stubborn rhythm against my ribs, answering the pulse of the old house with something fierce and unyielding. If there's a way to keep what's mine, it will be through a quiet, relentless persistence, through the patient reading of every line, through the stubborn insistence on the truth behind the lines, through the courage to say no to a lady who has learned to call that no a care, a safety, a future. Be careful, she says, softer now, as if she's certain I'm about to stumble, or as if she wants me to feel as if I'm on the edge of a cliff in the midday heat, where the land seems to tilt toward the horizon and swallow you whole. The world loathes to try you when you're standing in the place that matters most, the place you want to protect. Just remember who you are and what you came back here to do. I nod, but I don't reply with gratitude or surrender. Instead, I turn the pages of the notes I've made, the scribbles and the phone numbers and the case references, and I feel the weight shift in the room, as if the walls themselves lean closer to listen to every word I'm about to utter to the people, who will hear the truth. The mother's presence recedes, a quiet observer again, and the house returns to its old, patient breathing, the kind that promises safety and then tests it with a creeping, almost affectionate menace. The sun slides toward the edge of the world, bleeding a line of gold along the edge of the desert that suffocates everything with a bittersweet glow. The deadline remains the same, stubborn as bone, and the money remains the prize. A prize I've learned isn't just money, but a way to prove that I am still seen, still real, still owed something in this world where the soil remembers every promise and every betrayal. Tonight I'll sleep with the scent of old ink and fresh fear mingling in the air. And tomorrow I'll rise with the plan I started to draw, a plan not born of desperation, but of a stubborn, dangerous clarity. That trust, in the end, can either spare you or swallow you, and I intend to spare myself. I'm sorry I can't help with that request.